Hello and welcome back to Vinyl Safari. My name is Sean Patterson. In today's episode, it is part 2 of the deep dive into Bon Iver with my good friend Lucas. I've been very much looking forward to this after the first episode where we talked about the first 2 records in the catalog, which are For Emma Forever Ago and Self-Titled. In today's episode, we are talking about the third record, 22 A Million, and the most recent, I, which came out in 2019. We go into further detail about the concert we saw in that year in October, where they were touring that particular record, and a whole bunch of other interesting things about this music and the things that it means to us and the messages that we think are hidden in there. So if you haven't heard the first episode of this 2-part podcast, check it out, and I hope you enjoy the wrap-up of this particular topic. Thanks for listening as always, and I hope you enjoy. And we're back. We're back!
Yeah, I was listening to that episode with Oak Ridge, the Oak Ridge boys. Well, not the Oak Ridge boys, but the boys from Oak Ridge.
Yeah.
And Harrison talking about that Seinfeld episode. Oh, that's one of the best episodes.
Yeah. I've been doing that all the time recently, and it just cracks everybody up. It's great. Lucas is back in the studio with me.
Hey.
We are going to do part 2 of the Bon Iver podcast. Very much looking forward to this. And we gave some lip service last episode to Bloodbank, but we felt it deserved a little bit more of a look, so we're going to kick this off with Bloodbank, the live version.
A live version, yes. Because if I recall correctly, last episode we talked a lot about how surprisingly dancey and fun the live version is, so we thought to give you guys
and
all
rocky
a chance.
too.
Yeah, give you all a chance to hear what we were talking about a little.
Yes, indeed. So this is Bloodbank, live from Ericsson. What does it say? Ericsson Globe, Stockholm. Oh boy.
What? Just bringing me right back to the concert.
I'm so glad you stopped me from just playing the album version because, I mean, amazing. I love that version, but that was such a good call to do it that way.
Yeah.
We were talking during the song that this particular recording of the live show came out almost exactly a year before Lucas and I saw Bon Iver in Toronto, and it's a very similar version. So it's like reliving it. They really kind of rock it up. They really dig into the 4-to-the-floor kick drum. The lights as well, you were saying.
Yeah, there was like we were just all bathed in this crimson light.
Yeah. And
it was strobing a bit. It felt like, I think I mentioned in episode 1, like I wanted to dance. Like it felt like we were in a club listening to, I don't know, it was the coolest club around, obviously, if they're playing Bon Iver, but yeah, it was just, it was also high energy in the most relaxing way.
Yeah. It was also, to me, it felt like one of the sort of least sort of production heavy points of the show. And it was the first song of the encore. And it was because it was strobe lights, deep crimson red floodlights on everybody, and they're just rocking out. It was like stripped down to the bare minimum, which for the rest of the show there were elements of that, but you know, we mentioned they had all those crazy lights and reflecting mirrors and everything, and all kinds of synthesizers and
super specialized directional sound
in between all different kinds of instruments. But that was like a real like bringing it home kind of feeling, which was just a perfect song for the first song of an encore.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, moving on from the Bloodbank EP, which consists of that song and another one called Beach Baby, which is worth a listen. We should move on to 22 A Million, my favorite in the Bon Iver catalog.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah, hands down.
Interesting. I don't know if I can pick a favorite.
Really?
Because it would feel like trying to pick a favorite child. I don't know that I can do that.
It's presumptuous.
Well, I'm just being honest.
You didn't birth these albums.
No, of course, but like I think about it in the same way. I love them all so much.
Totally,
I couldn't pick one. Certain of them bring up certain parts of my life that I think back to, and certain nostalgic elements, hard times and also euphoric times.
Yeah, and I agree completely. I feel the same way about each album. It's just 22 A Million has all of that. Plus, I think the best songwriting, the best lyrics, the most interesting instrumentation, the best blend of, traditional four-piece band songwriting with like experimental synthy stuff and production stuff. I don't know. All around, it just feels like that was, at the time, I remember feeling like it was a perfect progression from where Bon Iver came from. And I would have been ecstatic if they stayed there for everything else since. I'm glad that they evolved a bit, as we'll see when we talk about I, and they changed even a little bit more. But I really like the sound they landed on with 22 million.
Yeah,
and
I think I agree.
Yeah,
it felt like because Bon Iver never kicked off with like a real vision or goal in mind, because as we discussed in the last episode, it was very organic the way that it developed with Justin Vernon on his own, and then eventually it evolved into this thing with a full band with the self-titled and building a studio and incorporating all of these other musicians and ideas, and then getting to this point with 22 where I feel like if Justin Vernon, being the sort of the main catalyst of the group, had any kind of a real vision, it felt like it was achieved with this one for the first time.
Yeah.
Like just like the shackles are off.
Yeah.
Everybody's contributing.
He's talked a bit too. I can't exactly recall where, but about how 22 Million is a very, very personal album for him. I think maybe right before recording it, he was kind of having nervous breakdowns a lot. He was really struggling with anxiety or something like that. And yeah, that really comes through in the lyrics and the feel of the album and the kind of the thematic stretches throughout it. Like pretty sure he has a bachelor's in religious studies, I think, minoring in women's studies, and you really see a lot of religious influence or kind of themes throughout 22 Million, and I think that kind of ties into this idea of it being a very personal album for him. Like, it's a lot of self-exploration, a lot of kind of figuring things out.
I think a lot of it also came from the fact that they'd for the first time been doing all this big world touring after self-titled, and just trying to grapple with being a famous musician and
collaborating
in the kind of
artists,
position that he'd sort of always dreamed of being in, and dealing with the kind of nitty-gritty real life elements that come with that. And I think I also heard in an interview him talking about how this album also was kind of laced with quite a lot of angst and discomfort and kind of anger, and you definitely hear that, I think, in Death
Breast.
Yes, that drum beat when that kicks in.
That song name.
Yes. But like, just I also really love how, I mean, it's one of those things where it might be stupid of me to say, because I'm sure the community has probably figured this out by now, but the similarity between Death Breast and Beth Rest, kind of throws me off. And when really,
they're like polar opposites, but the songs, the titles rhyme, and that's, that feels intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they do a lot of things that are unintentional.
Yeah, I agree.
Think there's a lot of whimsy in terms of, I think, how they make the music and how they come up with the ideas and in the process. But I think the naming conventions are actually quite
thought out, planned.
Yeah, quite thought out, and I mean, very strange.
Very.
This album specifically,
it's like a code.
Yeah.
Actually, I stumbled across a Reddit thread years ago about people like trying to decipher it, and they were going into like the Kabbalah, like Jewish mysticism, and stuff like the forget the secret society that like W.B. Yeats was a part of back in the day. Something about the dawn. I forget what it is now. I want to say Mythic Dawn, but I feel like that's from Oblivion.
That
is. But like they were pulling from all these weird places, and yet it all felt so plausible, because you're like, well, he did study this in college. I mean, it was an undergrad, so like who knows how deep he went, but it made it feel a bit plausible, and it was kind of fun to read along with it. And I don't know if anyone ever arrived at stuff, but even with like, if you look at the album cover for 22 Million, it's laid out sort of like the Jewish tree of life, if I recall correctly, like in the same sort of diagram. And there's a whole bunch of stuff with numerology,
a lot of symbology as well.
Yeah, and anyway, it's a bit of a trip. So I have a feeling that they were kind of taking the piss and just like, this looks cool.
You know what? That was the next thing I was going to get onto, because I actually heard, God, I can't remember who exactly. I don't know if it was Justin Vernon talking about this in an interview, but just the reason why numbers are so significant in the song titles, because they had so many songs going at the same time that they literally would just name them 22, 29, 33.
Yeah, right.
Like, and these are the songs that made the cut.
And then they
were so wedded to the process
number,
of referring to them by these numbers that they ended up bleeding into the song title. And that's where it kind of makes you think like maybe they were just
fucking around,
being deliberately ambiguous with the symbolism and the kind of cryptic naming. I do love the idea of Redditors just like ripping their hair out trying to figure out what are you telling me?
So good.
What does it mean?
Yeah, well, should we dive into our first selection from this album?
Yes, I think we should. I don't know if we need to preface it very much. If you are a Bon Iver fan, almost certainly this will be one of your favorite songs if you get it, and if you are particularly into this album. This song floors me every single time I hear it. It's a masterpiece in my opinion. I've heard even Eric Weinstein talk about this. I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't.
He's very he actually is the one who came up with the acronym IDW, or Intellectual Dark Web, like that kind of podcast, mathematician, philosopher kind of movement that sprung up online about like 5-6 years ago. And he's a mathematician and incredibly smart guy. He plays guitar as well and has a really deep sort of appreciation for music. And I heard him reference this song specifically as like one of those songs that you hear and you just think, how the hell does this happen? Yeah. You know? So the song we are talking about is Creeks.
Creeks. Specifically, 715-Creeks with 2 epsilons instead of E's.
Yes. Because Creeks wasn't good enough. Anyway, shall we do it?
Let's do it.
All right, and we're back.
I feel like both heavy and light after that song.
Yeah. That song makes me feel things, and I don't know what a lot of them are, and it makes me uncomfortable. But I also love it. Every single time I hear it, I'm entranced by that song. Mm-hmm. I cannot not pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. It's so simple, but it is so like far from easy, and
there's really nothing like it.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest analog would be another Bon Iver song.
I know.
Which is Woods, specifically, which he made and then Kanye found and loved and used with Bon Iver's assistance on Runaway, right? Or not
it was
Runaway.
It was on the same album. I think it might have been Runaway.
No, I don't think it was Runaway, but it was a song on that album. I think it might have just been called Woods.
Right.
But
Runaway has a vocoder-esque segment in it that's very identifiable as a similar thing. But yeah, I mean, we say vocoder, and that, like, for most people is an easy analog for what you're hearing, but it isn't, strictly speaking, a vocoder.
Because it's not just taking one vocal track and correcting the pitch on it or changing the pitch on it. It's layering copies of the same vocal track with pitches corrected in different ways,
and it's being played live on a keyboard. So in Justin Vernon's singing and making the shape with the mouth, the microphone is taking it in as his lead vocal, which you can hear him singing. It's auto-tuned, but you can clearly tell that's the lead voice. And then the keyboard is playing those syllables out as shapes of sounds, and it's layered in such a way. It's like, I've tried this before and I've showed it to you. Yeah. I tried this with a vocoder, and you can get pretty close to that kind of sound. Yeah. But it doesn't have the same kind of separation, like, and clarity between like the bass frequencies and the grittiness of it, and it kind of like almost falls apart in lo-fi kind of like
interesting
gooiness at times when it just like You know what I'm talking about, right? When he really gives it, and it's like the compressor isn't handling his voice properly, and it starts to distort in this really cool way. But yeah, I mean, the genius behind it is well, it's many things, but they call it the Messina after Chris Messina, who is famously one of the engineers who has sort of piloted the ship for a lot of Bon Iver stuff over the last decade.
Yeah, he's a proper member of the band, I'd say.
Yeah. But like he's known really essentially in his role as engineering and producing a lot of these really intricate and unique sounds.
And for inventing the Messina.
Yeah. Which it's kind of an instrument. It's kind of also just a collection of hardware and software, as they say. He said that in
he's very shadowy about exactly
interviews.
What it is.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you wouldn't want to give away all your secrets. It also might just be that they don't exactly know how it all came together. I would be perfectly willing to accept that as an explanation, because Lord knows, as somebody who's like done a lot of random production stuff, you stumble across things all the time where you're like, I don't know what's happening here, but it sounds really cool, so I'm gonna use it.
Yep.
And I think there is probably a lot of that going on, especially in these two albums that we're featuring on this particular episode. There's obviously so much exploration happening, and just the sheer amount of songs that they wrote. Like if you are numbering the song ideas that you're working on at any given time, and you get up above 30, which they obviously did.
This was 715.
Yeah, you are getting into some crazy territory. So you're gonna have some weird moments and some weird breakthroughs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
which is really what it's all about. I mean, I can only imagine how much fun they would have had discovering many of these things.
Oh, be hanging out with them at April Base, figuring this stuff out.
To be a fly on the wall.
It'd be so fun.
Oh my goodness.
There'd be so many.
Yeah, just a big haze of weed smoke through the entire thing. I mean, plus probably a few other things.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, we know certainly. I mean, he said that as much in the, or Justin Vernon said as much in the, I think it was the Zane Lowe interview for I. He was like, yeah, there was a lot of weed.
Yeah.
A lot of that happening.
And I read back at the release of I, he did an interview with Vice or Pitchfork or something. And I think during the interview, he dropped acid.
Really?
I think so. It wasn't a video interview. It was, but like it was text. But the interviewer was like, Justin then put a tab on his tongue and continued going on, something like that. I don't know. I'm exaggerating probably, but
well, this is news to me. It doesn't.
I'll see if I can look it up and I'll send it to you.
It's not that surprising.
I could be. I maybe dreamt it, but I like to believe it's true.
That's a hell of a dream if you did.
Well, you know, I have crazy dreams, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any other particular thoughts about Creeks?
Just that, like, I can listen to it nonstop, really. Like, you want to hear it again?
I kind of do.
No, instead we should move on.
Yes,
we'll do another song, though, that plays with, that has really cool production. Stratford Apartments.
Yes.
Hashtag or number 29, Stratford, APTS.
Yes. This
one, we heard a bit of it with Creeks, where, as you were saying, he really, like, kind of gives it. And things get a little bit crackly, things kind of get a little distorted.
Yeah.
This is done to great effect in Stratford.
I think in this song particularly, you get a lot of the contrast. The beginning of it, with the soft piano and the very light singing and everything, contrasted with that. I guess you could kind of say it's like a chorus that comes in there. At least it's a bit of a repeated melody that happens.
Yeah.
And it, like you say, it gets gritty and dark, and it kind of swells into this sort of chaos for a moment.
Yeah.
And then
the first few times I heard it, I thought my headphones were glitching.
Yeah. Oh, I have that all the time with and we'll come back to this on I as well. It's a common feature. I actually have found a couple of plugins that I like to use on some of my own stuff that do that exact thing. Cool. It is so much fun to play with. Yeah.
It's like, you're just kind of fucking with people.
Yeah. It also just makes certain sounds a lot more interesting. You know, you can play especially when you use it on analog instruments, you can play a piano or a guitar or a bass or, you know, whatever it might be, or even a vocal, and it sounds perfectly smooth and normal and interesting, or kind of flat. And it's just like, throw something like that on, it suddenly becomes super interesting.
It's like the famous story with Benny and the Jets, Elton John. His producer, like, from what I heard just on CBC the other day, Elton John himself kind of was like bored with Benny and the Jets. He was like, it's kind of sparse, boring, I don't really love this song. And his producer's like, no, there's potential here. And he took it and added in live applause, and like as if it was being played in front of a live audience. He ripped it from a Jimi Hendrix recording and chucked it on top, and smash hit overnight.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
Wild. I think I heard a similar segment about that, actually. That is so cool. Yeah, sometimes it really doesn't take a lot.
Yeah.
You can, just the subtlest detail can sometimes take something from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are a lot of those kinds of subtle details and things in the music we're talking about right now, but it just makes for an incredibly interesting, deep, and satisfying listening experience.
Totally. Another really fun fact about Stratford Apartments. If I ever do drag, my drag name would be from this
What do you
song.
mean if? What, I saw you last week.
Well, don't give away my name, because
All right.
I'll reveal it after we listen. But see if you can figure out what my drag name would be.
All right. I will try and figure it out. This is I'm just gonna say Stratford Apartments because I can't be bothered.
Hashtag 29 Stratford APTS.
Fuck off. Yeah. That is a very thick song. There's a lot going on there.
That crackly right at the, I hold the note you wrote and know you've buried all your alimony butterflies, and like crackling in there at the end. So cool.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing as a musician that I listen to, and I love it and I hate it at the same time, because I'm like, how the fuck did you think to do something that fucking cool and random? And where the fuck do you get off? I'm like, what the hell, man?
In your ears.
The rest of us are sitting here trying to get shit sounding perfect and crisp and clean, and
you're like, fuck it.
And then this happens, and I'm like, this sounds better than everything I've ever done.
Did you guess my drag name?
Alimony Butterfly?
No, that's not bad. But it's actually the very first line of the song.
Sharon Smoke.
Sharon Smoke.
Yeah, that's good.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah. Very clever.
Yeah, thank you.
We should do that after this, actually.
Drag?
Before we... No.
Yeah, we should.
Anyway, cheers.
All right.
It's all happening.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that song. It's just...
I have a few things to say.
Okay, go for it.
I mean, we kind of touched on it initially, I think, but just the contrast between the sounds in that song are it's oh god, I'm gonna have to cut some of this mumbling out. The way that it starts, it is very Forema-esque. And it even has a bit of like a lo-fi hiss in the background, like they've not properly...
Yeah, like you said when I started, it kind of sounds like a phone
mics.
recording.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And then the vocals come in, then they obviously sound, like they were layered over top. It sounds like the acoustic might have been like a phone recording.
Could have been, yeah.
That was then used as the bedrock for the rest of the song.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But yeah, when that I'm gonna call it a chorus just for ease of use. The chorus section where the Messina comes back in, there's this incredible walk up of the melody vocal and walk down of the vocoder sound.
Yeah, like doing this sort of like a negative harmony.
Yeah, and it adds harmonic content in at each sort of like phrase, and it swells into this incredible
and the whole
thing. But then it also at the very end it kind of fizzles out.
Yeah.
and it kind of like distorts a little bit at the end, and then it just sort of peters out into nothing, and then you're left with
there's
just
so
the
much
guitar.
of that in the song, so much of this sort of like contrasting tones, I don't know, opposed ideas kind of warring it out in this song. And it creates a sort of liminal atmosphere. It feels like in the lyric video for this song, which when they released the album, they released a series of lyric videos for each song, and
they have done, I think, ever since, really.
Yeah, pretty much, but these were special because they were very like just so interesting. I still watch them sometimes. I just find them fascinating. Also because I love poetry, so it kind of really draws out some of the poetic aspects of the lyrics, just the way that it's all presented on the screen. And at one point in the song, it's just a motel room with a psychedelic magic eye painting on the background and a fly kind of buzzing on the wall with the lyrics, I don't know, superimposed somewhere on top of the screen. And I don't know, the idea of a motel room with this song, it just seems to fit somehow. It's sort of an in-between spot, like you're working through shit. And then also references to things like alimony, or it feels like it's a tough time, but it's kind
sharing
of
smoke as well, which could mean anything.
Right.
Sharing smoke is like, it's such a beautiful way to put the act of any kind of like communal smoking, whether it be two people. Like it's just anything more than one. Having a smoke on your own or something, that's one very specific thing.
Yeah.
Can mean a lot of different things to you, but it is that thing. Sharing could be anything. It could be working through really hard times where you're venting to a friend. It could be with your significant other. Right,
because what is smoke? Like we assumed it was a dart or a joint, but it could also be fire. Figurative. It could be, exactly, like, from friction.
Yeah, exactly. And it could also just be the communal thing of having great people around you and just chilling out.
Yeah, like an atmosphere.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that song.
That's fantastic.
I'm really glad we picked. So obviously there are so many songs to pick through for
we could have done
for this entire
on this
series
album.
of podcasts, but this one specifically, I mean, both 22 and I, I think have more songs than either of the previous two albums.
They're like,
I, I has the most by far.
Yeah.
But there's just so many to pick through, and they all merit discussion in some way or another.
To some degree, yeah.
So we're just sort of doing not even a best of, but the things that stick out to us as fans,
trying to pick stuff
and also trying
to the album a bit.
Yeah, we're trying to give a decent coverage to where we can get sort of the crux of the ideas out there, and the sonic quality and the vibes and stuff. But that was a great pick for that one, because we were thinking of playing 666. Is it 666T? It's kind of like an upside down
T.
Yeah, it's a very sort of demonic looking.
It might also be an upside down cross.
Yeah,
I don't know. Or I think they call it something like St. Peter's cross, which has been adopted as a sort of satanic image, but really it's actually a saintly image. It's like in the Orthodox Church, it has something to do with, I think, St. Peter. I think that's his symbol, is the upside down cross. I don't know. I'm kind of speaking out of my ass, but I read something about that somewhere, and it's just been adopted as a satanic thing. But
and 33 God we also talked about, but I mean, great song as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that song.
Yeah. But we have, I mean, we do have to keep things moving, I suppose. So what have we done? 2 from 22?
Yep, we're on our last one.
So we're gonna do one more from 22, and then we're gonna take probably a quick break, and then we're gonna.
Well, 2 or 3.
It doesn't matter to you, the listener, but we're going to take a break.
Yeah.
And then we're going to come back in with
do 2 or 3 from the
I.
last one. Yeah.
Do you want to have a chat after we play this next one, or do you want to just play this one and leave it? I think we should chat about it briefly.
Which one are we doing?
8
Circle?
Circle. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll preface it quickly by just saying that this song is very important.
It's got a lot
to
of
both
meat,
of us.
I think.
Yeah.
And this song, for I think 2 years running, was my most listened to song on Spotify. Like, when you get that Spotify rewind or whatever it is. I like literally 1 year it happened. I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I listened to that song a lot. And then the next year it was the same song, and I was like, Jesus Christ, do I have a problem? And but it's just one of those songs that just gets me every single time I listen to it.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, and the fan has just come on in the basement, so this is a perfect time to stop and listen. We'll let that go off.
8 Circle, 8, and then in parentheses Circle.
Yeah.
By Bon Iver off their album 22 A Million.
Let's do it.
Keep waking up high.
Yeah. That's a hell of a last line.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that it's almost impossible to hear that on your first listening. Like,
yeah,
so
you
many
probably
of
just
those
hear
vocals.
a vague.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And a lot of the lyrics, not only on this song, but a lot of the record are, again, I'm not sure if they're intentionally ambiguous or just enunciated in a way that is not super clear, or if it's just that the idea was melodic and rhythmic, and it was an idea and words were fitted to it to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot, I think a lot of like Cocteau Twins when I think of Bon Iver lyrics. Because like Elizabeth Fraser kind of famously often would just write gibberish. It sounded like English or Gaelic or something.
It's a very common practice, actually.
And that would be, and it would change a bit from show to show, until it kind of became lyrics. And so like it ended up sounding like being nonsense, but still creating some sort of narrative, but it was based off of like just the sonic quality of, and I always think that's really cool. And I think there's something similar going on with Justin Vernon.
Yeah, almost certainly.
And actually it's funny you brought it up, because in I, IMI is the first full track on the album. Yeah. But in I, a lot of the songs are named after sort of like misophones of the lyrics. You know what I mean? Like they're like,
right.
So
yeah.
Like
no, that's true.
Like the song Gelmore, for example, Jelmore. Gelmore. The first lyric of the song is, "Well, angel mourn Sylvana," but angel mourn Sylvana, and the song became Gelmore. Yeah, it's so weird. There's a lot of little weird things like that in, or the last song on the album, RABi, RABi. There's a part in one of the verses. I could profit, spelled PROPHET. I could rob, ROB, comma I.
Yeah, that's great.
And then the name of the song became RABi. Anyway,
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it so much. Yeah, no, that's. I've noticed this actually a lot. There's a podcast called Tape Notes, and here I'm gonna go and advertise somebody else's podcast on my podcast, but genuinely, it's worth listening to. Tape Notes. They do basically a breakdown of an album with the artist or a representative of from the band and their producer on that album, and they basically recount stories about how they made the record. They usually have like the stems available so they can highlight individual instruments.
That's cool.
And the way that they layered it together, and they go through the process, and they've had so many really, really cool artists on there. Like some of my favorites, like Biffy Clyro was on. It did one of my favorites of their albums, A Celebration of Endings, and they talked about how they made that record. 1975 as well, which is the reason I'm bringing this up, because Matty Healy from the 1975 says he does the exact same thing when they're writing. He starts mouthing shapes of words that aren't, it's gibberish.
Interesting.
But he's using it to formulate a melody and a rhythm to the, and sort of a cadence to the melody. And the words
just emerge.
And the words come out of the shape of the vowels and the consonants that you want to hear
in
intuitively.
Those moments. Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a very common practice, I think, and I would be very surprised if Justin Vernon is not using a very similar thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think he probably writes a lot as well. I think like poetically, he's probably writing a lot.
Right, just writing stuff down all the time.
I think I'd be surprised if he doesn't, because I don't think you come up with the kinds of
things he says,
thick concepts and just the weight of every word that he does without
just having a
writing
bank to
a
pull
lot.
From.
Yeah, you have to the vocabulary that you need, and just the
vocabulary of ideas too. Right?
Yeah, like, the philosophical. It's like philosophy and thesaurus has a a Venn diagram.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
in that middle section is where you can write shit like this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's the one more thing about Eighth Circle, to bring it back to what we were supposed to be talking about. There's so many little moments in that song that are like entire narratives in like 2 or 3 lines.
I love that.
Like, and I'm standing in your street now.
Yep.
And I carry his guitar.
Carry his guitar. Yeah.
And about like but I know I'm going in. Yeah, like it's just like there's a little narrative there. I don't really know what it's about, but I can imagine the scene without any context. Yeah. And then like later on in the song, there's a completely new scene with no context. And like in that way, it reminds me of like T.S. Eliot, like modernist poems, where it's just a collection of scenes that speak to each other, but they're all taken, they're all adapted from other texts, like classic mythology, or other, great works of literature. But they're placed together in a sort of weird, warped way so that they speak to each other out of context and create a new idea. And you see that a bit in this sort of, in Justin Vernon's lyrics, in the song, I think, specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. What should we get on to next, then? Well,
I guess we're moving on to the next album.
Yeah. Did we decide on what we were going to listen to first?
I think we should just start with the opening track.
Yeah.
Of the album. Because this, I think, I think I, represents the largest departure from Bon Iver's initial sound that we've seen yet.
I find it so interesting that you say that, because I don't agree.
It sounds completely different. Maybe you can definitely see that it has the same DNA. But maybe like,
it's just
there's so much more synth. There's so much more. It's all major key, like upbeat, happy stuff. Well, not really, so. But like the overall vibe of the album is like that.
I feel like 22 from self-titled to 22 was a bigger departure than from 22 to I.
Really? I guess just in the mood, I see more of a continuity between the first 3 albums.
Thematically, they're all sort of very different.
They're almost sad albums, right? Like the first 3, and then the last album feels more happy or more hopeful than the other ones, and that's why I feel like it's more of a departure.
I suppose so. I actually, weirdly enough, think Forever, at least the way that it ends, was surprisingly hopeful.
Right.
I think Restacks as the last song ends on quite a hopeful note.
I always take that as one of the saddest songs of the album. So,
well, what is the last line of the song? What is it? Your love will be safe with me, I think. I find that an incredibly hopeful thing after what seems like a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching kind of bearing all without a map.
Yeah, you're right, actually.
But I don't know. It strikes me as very self-aware.
The last verse, or the last 4 lines of the last verse, because
sure,
it's actually beautiful. This is not the sound of a new man or crispy realization. The sound of the unlocking and the lift away. Your love will be safe with me.
Yeah,
you're right. That's really uplifting.
Exactly what I mean. And also just sonically, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
That is the culmination.
And it resolves well in that way. And yet the whole melody of the song, like the key it's in, the sort of mood of the guitar riff that's played, and the layered vocals, all of that contributes to sort of a melancholy feel, right? So there is hope in it, but overall it's melancholy, and that melancholy vibe really carries over into the self-titled.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely.
And then I think again with 22 A Million, it's also overall it's a melancholy album.
Yes,
whereas
and I think, as I said before, a little more angry.
Yeah, but I, is the furthest thing from melancholy I can imagine.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, so I suppose thematically, if you're thinking more about like the feel and the ideas behind the songs, then you're probably right that it is more of a departure from the rest of the catalog. sonically though, I think it feels to me like you know how I said like 22 felt like Justin Vernon discovering what he like really wanted to do, or like really like making Bon Iver what it needed to be.
Yeah.
I feel like I, is a continuation of that.
Yeah.
But even more like just the way that the ideas seem a little bit more clear and crystallized.
It's like 22 million is
it's almost like a zooming out on everything that has happened so far, sonically and thematically. Does that make sense?
It does. Like I was gonna say that it's like 22 million is they're finding themselves, and in I, it's they're stepping into that, like they're being themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like the shackles are off. You can do. Yeah, like just be as you are.
And I acknowledge that. Like there is that thread running from 22 million to I, but it's almost like they were following a thread from, for Emma to self-titled, and then they were kind of loosening their grip on it and maybe reaching for a new thread with 22 million, and then they dropped the old thread and grabbed the new thread. Yeah. For I. So there is this continuity, but there is like.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And I actually heard John Mayer talk about a very similar thing. John Mayer might seem like a completely random person to bring into this, although
strange connection.
They have jammed together live on stage. And there's a video on YouTube of them jamming together, and Justin Vernon just goes off on this crazy rip on his gold top Les Paul, no hat on, just looking like a
like a younger Rick Rubin,
kind of like a homeless Rick Rubin with a guitar. But anyway, I heard John Mayer talk about a similar phenomenon where for a long time and for several album cycles, he felt like he was trying to prove certain things about himself or about his abilities or about the range of what he's interested in and able to do. And then at a certain point, you get to a spot where it's like, I'm done doing all the proof. I'm just going to make all the things that I need to make, or that comes naturally to me. And there's no pretense. Oh. And that feels like I, They did that. Was the first, maybe the cutting edge of that for Bon Iver going forward, which
makes me excited to hear what happens next.
Yeah, I and it's just a hunch, but I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
they could go and do like a fucking crazy blues folk album and make a complete ass of me, but
I'd still be there for it.
Oh, I would be. Are you kidding me? That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's sort of the way I think about it, at least.
All right, so to kick off this album, we should starting with the first track. Well, technically the second track. The first track is like 30 seconds long.
Yeah, it's kind of an intro track. It was
how they
it's a very cinematic thing.
It's how they did the transition after the opener in the concert. Is they played that over the speakers without actually they just played the recording over the speakers, and then everyone was like, "Oh shit," the main event, and then they came in opening with the track we're about to play,
which I apparently I think this was in the Zayn interview with Justin Vernon right when the album dropped.
Yeah,
I think they said like that shh sound is actually like somebody rubbing a piece of cardboard or
something like that
in front of a microphone or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just the kind of thing that you're just like, I love it, and I fucking hate that you did that and thought of that and made that into something so interesting.
It's just
it's how the hell does that happen?
Well, it happens by setting up that environment, right? Like he has April Bass, he has a collection of like 30 people who he just hangs out with and makes music with all the time, and including the 6 members of the band itself. And you just encounter those situations, I think, So basically what I'm saying is this is why we need to like start a commune.
Yeah, just this times like 10 with all the people of the same mindset.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just doing LSD and making
yep, farming a little bit and making a lot of music.
Quick PSA: we're not on LSD right now. Thank you very much. That was a joke.
All right, well, let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
I Am I.
Yes.
From the album I, I.
Oh, Jesus. Hold on. Here we go. All right.
Wow, start to finish.
Oh, my
Unreal.
goodness.
Wow. What just an explosion of sound. You know, back in the very first,
it's a smorgasbord of sound.
In the very first Vinyl Safari episode, for all you Vinyl Safari nerds out there like me who've listened to them all, I'm brushing dust off my
first of
shoulders.
what?
Of the entire series
With Hawksley?
Yeah, you talked about the Beatles.
Oh yeah,
and how their music is
I know what you're talking about. Hawksley said that.
Yep.
The color saturation is there. Yeah.
On this song, turned up to 11. Turned up to 111. Unreal.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up, actually. First of all, I can't take credit for that. Those are Hawksley's words. No, but he perfectly captured the idea that I didn't know that I was attracting me to most of the music that I like.
Yeah.
It's a color saturation thing.
Yeah.
If you're a synesthetic person, which means somebody who taking in, I don't know if synesthesia is specifically audio related or if it's just certain senses that aren't visual that you connect visually with color in your brain.
It's even broader than that, to my understanding. It's like a cross-pollination of sense experience.
Right.
So it's like understanding a sense experience simultaneously from some stimuli simultaneously on like two or more sense organs, right? So like you might interpret a sound as a color, which is the common one. That's what Kanye West claims to have, and other people.
Oh, I've got so hard.
Yeah.
I can't not do it. Certain chords, I could listen to music and figure out the key that it's in based on the color way that it feels and looks in my head.
That's amazing. I love
wild
that.
Sometimes.
But you know, you could also conceive of it as like a smell, right? Like in Ratatouille, the guy when the rat smells, what's his name again? Remy. When Remy smells food, he has like an explosion of color and fireworks in his head. Like that's technically synesthesia too.
Yeah.
But it could also be. I assume it could also be. Maybe when we taste things, that's technically synesthesia for everyone because we taste and smell at the same time.
Yeah, I can't pretend that I know if there is a difference between taste and smell at all. I don't know. I hear that that's a thing, but
moving on.
I can't even conceptualize it. Anyway, but on the topic of what we just listened to, it's a brilliant metaphor, I suppose. The colorful, the colorful nature of the music. You're absolutely right. It's a high saturation song, which audio engineers will cringe at because audio-wise it is not highly saturated, but metaphorically it is.
Yeah, but yeah. To the brain, it's saturated.
Yeah. So we mentioned. Well, I guess I keep forgetting what we've talked about off mic versus on mic.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yes, the beginning of the song apparently technically starts with somebody rubbing a piece of cardboard. That's like, yes, kind of thing. But they're obviously just checking mics and making sure everything's hooked up.
Are you getting that? Yes.
It's so good. It's such a lame way to say it too. Yes.
But you know, it's great because it's like it really like locks you into the sense that like, oh, this album is going to be a bit experimental.
Yeah. This
album is going to be, we're trying things out. We're like capturing things live off the floor. I mean, who knows how much of that they actually did, but that's definitely the feel of the whole album. Mm-hmm. It feels very spontaneous. And you know, it's like whenever I hear that beginning little voice segment at the beginning, I think of the band members like in a laboratory, like Frankenstein and Igor, you know?
I feel like this is the perfect way to characterize it at the beginning, because it probably was setting things up, going ksh, ksh, and it happening to line up to a beat or invoke something in someone, because you're not going to finish a song like that and then go back and say, oh, I feel like there was a really cool weird sound that we made when we were setting the mics up that would work well here. It's obviously the other way around. Right. It has to start from that kind of a moment.
It's coincidental in
order for that to become, and it so slowly evolves from ksh, ksh, into and then it turns into chords, and the beat kind of develops from there.
Yeah.
It seems very organic, is what I'm saying.
Organic. That's a great word for it. This album really does, even though it's the most produced out of all the albums and the most synthy and the most electronic. And I was saying to you earlier, you see a lot of Justin Vernon's influences from people like Aphex Twin or Brian Eno, or like electronic ambient kind of music pioneers who are the farthest thing from folk, but you really start to see his influence or their influence come into this music.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet, despite all of that, the whole album does feel very organic. It feels alive.
Yeah, totally. This is again sort of why I say I feel like this is Bon Iver coming to a head, where it's the intersection of everything. It's the full culmination.
You know, it's kind of cool because they released a video maybe last year, 2 years ago, like a little promotional video about, I don't know, and they did this sort of implication connection between each of their albums in different seasons, which is interesting because a lot of Bon Iver fans I talk to associate each album with a certain season.
Well, they came out at certain times of the year too, so. But
it was stuff like I think the way they set it up was. Anyway, that's not important, but it's like a sort of a progression of time and like change, and you can almost conceptualize the albums like that. Like the first album, Emma, is almost like a seed, right? And then the self-titled is like the sprout. Yeah, you know, it's just pushing up out of the soil a little bit. It's like showing its face a bit more colorful, a bit more bright, more complex, but still somewhat reserved. And then 22 a million is it's starting to grow a stalk, maybe putting out a few little leaves.
Vegetative.
Yeah, and it's like
when it starts to,
you're starting to see what it could
it's
be.
Not flowering,
but it's struggling a little bit.
Vegetation
it's got a long way to go,
there.
but it's like it's exciting where it is. And then this one, it's flowered.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you, and it scares me because I really hope that they don't stop now.
Yeah.
Because I can see them looking back and seeing like, you know what? That is a beautiful way to end this project and say, yeah, it's done. But, oh my God, I hope that they put out another record.
Oh, me too.
I hope that isn't just the, the end.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. On that topic, we're going somewhere else next.
But did you not want to mention anything about the end of the song?
Oh, God damn it. Yes, you're absolutely right. Sorry. Thank you for keeping me on the ball. What was I going to say about the end of this? Oh, yes. So there's a very chaotic kind of swell at the end of the song where it sounds... I'm not sure if it was made live off the floor when everybody is just swelling and playing their own thing, but it kind of like morphs through chordal shapes as it goes up, like it's building up the whole time, and it kind of does this like big swell at the end where they all land on the same chord, but all the way through it's like an incremental build and everybody is doing
anything
ridiculous. Like if you were to listen to any of these tracks individually, it would sound like nonsense.
Sound like a warm-up before,
and that's the thing where it makes me wonder if they were all in the same room playing that together, where that was the idea. Like, we get to this point, you just play whatever you want in this sort of loosely building thing, and we end on this chord, or was it
layered,
different parts of random takes?
It's hard because
playing
one of
trumpet and
the bass player,
sax and all that, and just layering it on top together.
I don't know his name, but the guy who plays bass most of the time in the band, he also does sax and I think a couple other brass instruments.
Yeah, I think so.
So it could have just been him layering sounds on top of each other, or they could have brought in, because they've also toured with a brass band and had them live on stage with them. So it could have also been that they hired a brass band to do it live off the floor together. Yeah, I have no idea, but either way,
that's one of the questions I would love to ask of
how did you do the build
band.
on
How
RABi?
did that get done?
Yeah,
because I'm so torn. It could be just production magic of a bunch of different random things that were layered on top of each other, or it literally could be all of them in the room feeling that same vibe, pushing it messily up into the surface, and then landing on that.
Yeah, as much as I want it to be that, either way it would be impressive.
Yeah, but the other thing is just imagine like a very sophisticated like jazz musician or somebody who could do musical notation. Imagine trying to write that down. If you were going to notate the end of that song for an ensemble to be able to play it.
I'm going to ask my dad to do it.
Could you, serious? Does he know how to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, good God. Could you please ask him to do that?
He might be like, no, that's too much.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you would do it. There is no program that you could use to separate those out enough to be able to hear them. You could, if you listen really closely, you could probably get
most of it
pretty close, but none of it is to a specific beat. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So how would you notate it to do that? That's why I think
my dad has a real shot at doing it. I'll see if he's interested.
Oh God, please do.
He might agree to do it and then never do it too. So I don't know.
We should mention that Lucas's dad is quite an accomplished musician in his own right. Mostly gospel and religious music, but just he's got a lot of really good musical instincts.
Yeah, he's talented. He plays everything.
Yeah. I love talking to him about this stuff too. Anytime we get together.
Yeah, me too.
He always finds a way to corner me, and I say that as if it's bad. I like talking to him about this stuff, but we always end up getting into a conversation about music.
Totally,
it's great.
About music and anything else.
No, philosophy, all kinds of things.
He's a good to have a conversation with.
Yeah, absolutely. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, my friend.
Well,
cliche. Okay, that was dumb.
Yeah, and you're not going to edit it out?
Nope. Let's listen to the next song.
Which is?
I think we were going to do Faith?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, we're on Faith.
Did we skip anything?
No, but it's hard. We struggled here though, because there's a lot of songs between IMI and Faith that are really close. Like in the first episode, we mentioned that Justin was hanging out with Bruce Hornsby one day.
Yes.
And listened to a demo and was like, I like this. And Hornsby was like, I don't know what to do with it. You can just take it. And he did. And that song is on this album. And it's called You, and then in brackets Man Like.
Yeah.
And it's a great song. So that was a contender. There's also Hey Ma, which has ugly number of streams on
120 million. I didn't realize this. Outside of the collaborations with Taylor Swift, it might be the most streamed. Actually, probably Skinny Love has more. But as far as the later Bon Iver stuff goes, it's eclipsed.
So you don't need to hear it. You've probably heard it already. And then there's also songs like Salem, Unreal.
Yeah.
There's.
I will say, on the topic of that song, when we saw Bon Iver live, Justin Vernon went on a heck of a rip on the guitar at the end of that song. It was like full on Grateful Dead style, like just that's just this beat and a couple things underneath, and just it just went on like a 2 or 3 minute tear.
It was sick.
Playing the guitar, it was amazing.
Real cool. And I mean, he's played with Dead & Co. a few times. That's how we jammed with John Mayer. Right?
Yeah. I think I said it in the last podcast, but yeah, he's a very, very talented guitarist, and it's very understated in most of the Bon Iver catalog. But I really like that he does take the time now and again in a live context to kind of flex those muscles.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, and I got.
It's also just another instrument that somebody like that who's so melodically gifted can use to express that.
Right.
You know, it's. He could be singing, he could be using a synth, he could be playing the bass, he could be playing the guitar. He's going to be expressing in an incredibly colorful way because that's just what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But moving them back to the song.
Yes.
Lots of contenders, but this is a favorite of ours.
Yeah.
It's Faith.
Faith. I love this song.
Need another beer.
Oh man. What a song. I should say for listeners, while we're listening to these songs in real time, we are having conversations over top of them, during which we're like, "Oh, shut up! We should talk about that during the podcast. And make sure you remember this point." And should have waited, but sometimes you can't help it.
Yeah.
That song. I'm going to let you start actually on this one. If you're
I there's something about that song that I can't express. And when we listened to it at the concert back in 2020,
5 years ago, 19.
2019.
Yeah.
Right before the event.
Almost 5 years ago.
Excuse me. I the whole concert I was close to tears. I don't know. This band has been so huge throughout, some of the most tumultuous and meaningful years of my life, i.e., adolescence, for everyone. And to see them live was like very incredible, and it was a very emotional concert for me.
Yeah.
I really valued it. And when this song came on, I don't know if I was just in the right state of mind, if there was something about the performance that conveyed something new to me, but I had a religious experience. I had this understanding of the song and of my life and of existence that I hadn't arrived at in any other way prior to that experience. And I can't even now really remember exactly what I felt, but I know that it changed me. It sounds dramatic as hell, but
I agree with you though, because I was there.
Yeah.
Like, I was as close to your point of view and experience as any other human could have been, and I'm telling you, I felt exactly the same thing, and probably not exactly the same way.
No, but you understand.
We have different, like anybody, we have different relationships with spirituality and religion and whatnot. But I don't think that I think calling something like that a religious experience is a perfectly reasonable, if not the perfect way to describe the experience of being in a room full of people like that, listening to the same music, having the same feelings, the same thoughts, the same things that they're looking at. Like, in some way, it's the definition of a religious experience.
Right. It is. Yeah.
Essentially, it is. And I think that a lot of people in this day and age, and how secular we are can be somewhat resistant to that kind of thing, which I don't blame them. I'm not overly religious myself, but I think in understanding what that kind of thing means, I think putting it in those terms is perfectly reasonable, and I think it's possibly the only real true way to describe that kind of feeling.
Yeah. Maybe not the best for convincing somebody to listen.
No, maybe not. But I mean,
so if you've never listened to Bon Iver before and somehow you've made it to this point in this podcast,
I mean,
don't listen to
you,
me.
Honestly.
Yeah. Well, then,
I'll use all the religious.
If you're still listening, you should just go listen to the song.
I will use all the religious words in the world if you're still here and you don't have any idea what we're talking about. Fucking bless you. Are you kidding me?
Or either that, or like, I hope your dinner tastes good, because you've obviously been focusing very hard on it.
Yeah.
And not listening to us. But but I know what you mean. Like, that's just the only way I can describe that song. It's unreal.
Yeah, I've tried to.
It's obviously a very religious song. Like, I feel like it's meant to convey that sort of experience. It's called faith, and like the.
But I think it's
almost discordant, really layered, like harmonized choral sounds that are kind of like accompanying the big swells and the big climaxes in the song. They remind me of like a chorus of angels described in the Bible, you know, and the do not be afraid, classic line that angels always say when because it's like intimidatingly beautiful. Yeah.
But I think if I can, thematically, this song actually feels quite a lot like a struggle to me. And I think if you analyze the lyrics, you can see a lot of that.
Yep.
I think it's as much a declaration of faith as it is a questioning of the idea.
And that's
faith.
really what I think that's the realization I really came to at the concert, was like, it really helped me understand what faith is in a way that I hadn't understood prior. Because like growing up religiously, and that being a common, like the word faith and the concept of faith being common in my upbringing, it kind of became, I don't know, I became desensitized to it. I didn't really understand what it meant. But it was the way that certain lines were sung, the way that the song was arranged live, it just changed the way I was thinking about faith. And I came to understand it more as like a choice you make, a commitment you make, and it is sort of irrational, but it's necessary. And I just, and I'm not going to by saying what I just said is not going to convince anyone to suddenly have faith in anything because I just said that. It's something that you have to, an understanding you have to just come to based on whatever experiences you've gone through.
No, I fully agree.
But
I think
it was life-changing. And like, it's summed up really well in the last line of the song, right? Like, we have to know that faith declines. Yeah. I'm not all out of mind.
Can I draw attention real quick to an earlier verse?
Yeah.
Or actually, I think the one right before that. Well, there are a few lines in there that really stick out to me, but the one that I think points to my idea of it being something of a struggle with the idea is the line, "It's not going the road I'd known as a child of God."
Yeah.
Which, because obviously with his history studying religion and all of this, and obviously being brought up in a culture where that is very prevalent,
Minnesota, yeah.
I think it's a very honest and mature reflection on the idea of coming up with a particular worldview, being brought up with a particular worldview,
consistently challenged,
and also realizing the benefits against the pitfalls. And then what was the other lyric that I was thinking of? Am I dependent in what I'm defending?
Yep.
Do we get to hold what faith provides?
Yeah.
It's a question. It's almost like a materialistic or atheistic question. Like, do I actually get to know or hold what it is? Is it tangible, what I'm talking about, or is it
I also love the
else?
first part of that. Am I dependent in what I'm defending? Like, I love that because I think it's almost like a logical fallacy that people don't talk about, right? Like if you're, or maybe it's not, maybe people talk about it, but it's just called something that I don't know. But like,
no, I know what you're saying.
You're arguing for something. It's a bias, right? Like it's your confirmation bias. That's what it's referring to. Like, are you, just defending something because your identity, your personality, your worldview, your belief system is dependent on that? And if it fails, then everything fails, and like,
it's an incredibly
and the way
honest
it's questioned in the song makes it kind of seem like, well, if that's so, then maybe you should rethink what you're defending, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the term faith as an overarching idea for all of these lyrics we've been discussing is perfect, because it could be used to justify all of these irrational things that we don't think about and don't when we don't comprehend whether we're dependent on the ideas we're defending and all of these things. Or it could be faith despite knowing that you can't properly defend everything in your life that you're dependent on, or
what are you gonna believe in anyway?
Yeah. It feels to me like it's asking all of these questions at the same time, which is, it might be super muso and stupid and over the top to be discussing, but it's simply the way that I feel when I listen to the song, and it was what I felt when I was at the concert. And I don't care really particularly if anybody else listens to this and feels the same way. It's just the way that I felt about it, and I think that stands on its own merit.
I agree.
It's and I'm quite happy to talk to you about this, because I know you and I had such a similar experience at the time.
Totally. Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to really talk more about this song other than technically if that hadn't happened.
Right. Exactly. But in the technical conversation on this song that's a whole nother 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Which we could get into, but let's save it for maybe talking about the next song.
Yeah.
Unless you have more to say about faith.
I don't know if I have that much more meaty things to say about faith, other than the melodic content is exceptional. Like just some of the moments, especially when it starts to really build towards the end. It hits me every single time. I get goosebumps every single time when he says, "It's not going the road I'd know, not going the road I known as a child of God." It hits me every single time. it's the kind of thing that as a songwriter and composer you listen to and you just think, I aspire to be able to evoke that kind of feeling with notes and syllables and beats.
Yeah.
And
you know what? Actually,
you can't really break it down
there's
to
a
that.
sub lyric right after that. It's like, not
so
going the road I've known.
I'm satisfied.
So what if I lose? I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's like that again is perfect because it's like, I think to me that calls forth the idea of like, well, I'm afraid to commit to this idea or to believe in this thing because it might be wrong. And that's something I deal with personally a lot, and I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, of
course.
course.
You're hesitant to put your faith in something because you're worried it's going to be the wrong thing to have your faith in somewhere down the line. But like that line is almost like a reminder. Like, so what? If you lose in the end, whatever, are you satisfied with that belief now, or can you be satisfied in that faith now? Because that's what you have right now.
Yeah.
So what if you lose? If you're satisfied.
Yeah. It's actually a great lyric to highlight for this song specifically.
And it's weird. It's not even a main lyric. It's a sub lyric. It's sampled.
It's almost incomprehensible when you listen to the record, but when they did it live, there was at least 3, maybe 4 of the rest of the band singing it in real time, and that's where I really heard it because they were actually enunciating the lyrics.
Yeah.
Because you can't do just like gibberish in that. You kind of have to sing something, and
it's almost like they were like, listen to this.
Yeah. And it was a very, very significant moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that song.
I also love the next song.
Yeah, so we're gonna go into. I guess we're gonna
end it.
Yeah, we're at an hour 10, give or take, of talking time. Probably closer to an hour 30 or 40 with songs. So we will try our best not to waste any more time. But
I think we might return with a little closing question.
We'll have a quick closing comments after this one. But to wind down, would you like to intro the song? We've
mentioned it earlier.
It was the last song that we heard. At the show. Very last. Second song on the encore.
And the last song on the album. Yeah. It's called RABi. Yeah. RABi. Yeah. Capital RAB, lowercase I. And what a closer to the album. It's just perfect. It's a beautiful song. I have no idea what it means. But the lyrics are so beautiful.
It's the perfect closure.
Yeah.
I feel. It just feels like not even like a shiny bow on a present, but it just feels like a pulling together. It feels like
like coming in, it feels like a hug,
end.
Like coming into a warm cabin with a fire after a long hike through the snow.
You know what it feels like? It's a similar kind of hug the way Stax was on Forever at the very end.
Oh man, you know what? I love that you said that, and I hate it because that's another reason why this might be their last album ever.
Please don't say that.
God. With no further ado, let's listen to RABi.
Let's do it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that feels like a very nice way to end.
It's such a good closer. Yeah. Just in general, it's a good closing song. Yeah. Not just for that album, for that concert, for this podcast, for my life. I want that playing in my last moments.
Honestly, I agree.
I'm not going to put it in my will, but if that's playing in my last moments,
it's the kind of thing that you would imagine or hope, or at least hope to feel in your last moments, or in any moment that is of a particular.
Well, it's all fine, or it's all crime anyway.
Yeah. I just love that, like. It's so laid back, that song.
Mm-hmm. It feels like a beach.
Yeah. It does. It really does. Or a creek. There were 6 of us in Creekside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, isn't this a beach?
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should do a couple of quick honorable mentions. Sure. I think Marion, if you're not familiar, go and listen to that song as well. I mean, the home truth on all of this is listen to Bon Iver, listen to all the albums in their entirety, get the full experience, do it twice, because you're not going to get it on the first time. Trust me, you're not going to get it all on the first time, but it is all there if you're willing to take it.
Oh yeah.
And it is it's one of those listening experiences that is hard to replicate and hard. I mean, I the reason we're doing this podcast really is that I find Bon Iver to be a singular generational artist.
Yeah. Agree.
Obviously, I'm biased in that direction. There are all kinds of artists that about which you could do this kind of thing, but yeah.
But there's something, I don't know. To me, there's something unique about Bon Iver's stuff. It's original. It's poetic. It's complicated. It's listenable. All
and
at
it's
once.
also so simple.
Yeah.
Like I put this music on the background sometimes, and I mean it almost always catches my attention, which is
but
an
not
incredible
necessarily
feat,
in a distracting way.
No, not at all. It's harmonious.
More in a way,
that
it's
it
like,
catches my attention. I
feel good right now.
Yeah,
you know?
it accompanies feelings and activities and things in a beautiful way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So good. So let's assume that we know with certainty that a 5th Bon Iver album is coming.
Okay.
What do you hope for?
I feel like to say so would actually do a disservice because I haven't expected anything that we've gotten on all of these previous records. It's just gotten more and more interesting and more exciting.
So you expect another maybe slight
I would
departure?
say I expect the unexpected in a cliched kind of way. Like,
yeah.
I
know what you mean, though.
I mean,
like you expect they're going to move away from what they just did in a way that stays true to past themes, but interprets it in a new light.
Yeah, I would hope so. And again, like it's been 6 years, was it? That we said 5 or 6 years,
something like that.
I mean, since the creation of the record, almost certainly going on 6 years. Because by the time we hear it, it's usually probably at least a few months or to a year old. But yeah, I don't know what to expect. I quite happily don't expect anything particular.
Yeah.
I just want to hear it. Like it, totally. And I really hope that
What would you like though? Well, maybe that's what I meant to ask. Cause
I just want them to keep doing things.
Whatever
I just want them to
yeah.
keep creating. I want them to keep exploring. I want them to keep pushing the bounds because Bon Iver pushes the bounds unlike any other artist I know.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the like ground truth of this whole podcast and the last one. Like I just there are things, there are instincts that I didn't know existed, and sounds that I would never have thought would be pleasant to listen to, or
and
anything
yet
like that. And here I am, and we're talking about it, and it's been 5 years since the last full record, and I'm still obsessed. I just want to hear more of this. I want to hear more of the exploration. I want to be a part of the journey.
I'm so thirsty for more Bon Iver. Like every time a new single comes out or a feature, I'm like, ooh, I gotta.
And there are plenty. We should say that Justin Vernon and the team, like they're so prolific.
Yeah, I recently just listened to the song they did for that Netflix movie a year or two ago called "Don't Look Up." They did a song called "Second Nature." God, that's a beautiful song.
Yeah,
unreal good. Or the song they did for that Zach Braff movie. Forget what it was called, but the song's called "Heavenly Father." And unreal good.
That song was. I mean, that song. When they played it live, it was maybe their 6th or 7th song during the set list, and that is the kind of song that just reduces you to tears, and you can't even try and be like macho about it. It's just that beautiful. We were all there. We all saw it and heard it. I looked around and we were all tearing up.
Yeah.
And it was like, just,
Yep.
it was that experience.
We all, by the way, means more than just Sean and I.
Yeah, we were there with
also
a couple of friends as well.
my girlfriend at the time, now wife, Sarita, and our very, very close friends, Becca and Jake.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It
we
was
were
a
all
very
tearing
good
up
experience.
for sure. And even Jake was tearing up, and that's saying something, because he came because he likes Bon Iver, but he really just came to hear "Hey Ma" so he could scream "Hey Ma, Hey Ma," and he did. But then he teared up at Heavenly Father, and I knew that it was a good idea to bring him along.
Yeah, that was again, that's a top 5, maybe top 3 concert experience for me. And I've seen a lot of great concerts. That is up against some stiff competition.
Mm-hmm.
It was something else.
Well, for the record, in the next Bon Iver album, I would like to see them come back to their first album a little bit. Maybe do something a bit more stripped back.
For Emma or Bonnie or
for Emma.
Oh yeah.
No, let's say the first band album. Like let's say they're self-titled.
Yeah, I think there's a reasonable case to be made that For Emma was a Justin Vernon album.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And
yeah. You're right, and I don't want them to go back to that, because that was perfect for the time and place that it came out in. But I
don't not want them to do that, but I think
there's lots more. There's lots out there of that style that is putting out new music constantly. Like Monrovia is an artist I recently discovered who fantastic. It's just like early Bon Iver. It sounds so good. I'll show you his stuff later.
Yeah.
But a little bit of a return to the roots I think would be really interesting with some of these influences from the new albums.
Yeah.
You know?
I will also say some people consider Bon Iver and similar artists to be kind of like a new folk thing.
Mm.
And folk is not really the right word.
Not at all.
It's basically just acoustic singer-songwriter is what people mean when they say modern folk. But I have thought many times that folk was kind of like a dying or dead genre. And I don't say that with any kind of joy. I love folk music, and I it's the same way that I would never declare rock to be dead or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying this to say that new folk music constantly surprises me.
Yeah.
In the way that we say new folk.
Yeah.
But like Glenn Hansard alone. Glenn Hansard is, I have to say, one of the reasons, if not the reason, that I play music today myself. He's a foundational artist right there alongside Hoxley Workman. Like, just, I would not have the same kind of passion or understanding of that kind of music or the desire to create in this medium, but for Glenn Hansard and once the Swell Season. And he has constantly created and like conjured out of nowhere music that still fits into that category of folk and new folk and stuff. I'm like, you think you've heard the end of it, and then you hear a new song and it's like, well, I don't know what else to call it. It's still kind of that thing, but it's so interesting and new.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's melodical differences, sometimes a little bit of an instrumental change. You can't really, I mean, you could analyze it, but you can't really figure out what it is that is the difference. It's just quality, interesting, passion-laden music.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope to hear more of from Bon Iver generally. I just want more of that.
Yeah.
I just want it to, I want to feel what they're feeling. I want to hear what they're feeling. Even if they think it's weird or crazy.
Let it out.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, me too.
They've obviously proven themselves enough to where we're talking about this. God knows how many years after. I mean,
it's just in everyone. We want to hear it.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
And let's wrap it up too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lucas. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conclusion of this 2-part deep dive into Bon Iver. We certainly did. This kind of music really means a lot to us, and if you haven't taken the time to explore this particular artist, I do really recommend it. There's a reason we're still talking about this music several years to a decade after much of it was made, and topics like this are just so much fun to dive into. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen. Drop us a like, a comment, whatever you can do to help the podcast out. It really makes a difference. And we will see you on the next Vinyl Safari.